Greetings and thank you so much for joining us today. I am Anna Deshawn. I'm the founder of E3 Radio. I'm the co-founder of The Cube, and you are tuned in to Money, Money, Money. Hey, money. We are talking about money, but it's also about closing the gap, right? For our LGBTQ seniors, access to SSA survivor benefits. And when I first heard about this topic, probably back in November or December, I knew that I wanted to amplify this message. So we talked about it on the Queer News podcast, right? And I did a TikTok about it. I wanted to tell more people because I just knew that people had no clue that this could actually apply to them. The Biden administration made lots of things possible, okay? And it's worth noting because so many of us for so long, right, our relationships weren't seen as legitimate or valid. And it wasn't until 2015 when marriage equality became legal that we saw some advancements, but there were still things that needed to be done. And LGBTQ survivor benefits are just one of those things. And so I knew someone that knew someone that knew someone else, and we got Peter Wren, senior counsel at Lambda Legal, to join us today to talk about this. And he's worked on this case. He knows all about it. All right. So what I want you to do is, if you're joining us, wherever you're joining us from, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, type to us. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Tell us if you have any questions, if you got any comments, put them in there. We're taking questions at the end of the broadcast, and if Peter can answer them, he will. And I'm just really excited to have this conversation. We've got a special guest too, and I'm not giving it away just yet. It's a nice tease, okay? But he is absolutely a special guest for the broadcast. And so I don't want to keep us too much longer. Let's just get into it and welcome Peter to the show.
Hey, Anna. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so glad that we were connected to one another.
Me too. It's so great to see you, Peter. I hope all is well in your world.
Yes, it's a sunny day in Los Angeles here.
I can't say the same about Chicago, but who knows? By the time anyone's watching this, it might be sunny here in Chicago. It just might. And so I want us to talk about this, and thank you for the work that you've done to talk and to work through with some of our LGBTQ seniors actually accessing these survivor benefits. But let's just start in the beginning. If folks don't even know, what is a survivor benefit?
It's a great question, Anna. So survivor's benefits are the benefits that you can get based on the work history of your loved one from the Social Security Administration. And the general requirement is that you have to be married for at least 9 months to the person who passed away to get them. And therein is the problem for our community, because we weren't always able to be married, let alone for 9 months. And so that's the problem that Lambda Legal tackled through our 2 class action lawsuits.
And it is really important. And when I was reading and learning a lot more about this topic, I understood that even people who weren't married but could show that they were in a committed relationship, maybe they bought buildings together, maybe they raised a family together, maybe they shared bank accounts, all these things, that they too could reap benefits now. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So we had 2 different cases. One, as you just mentioned, is on behalf of same-sex couples who were never able to be married for a single day because a loved one passed away before marriage equality. Then the other case was on behalf of same-sex couples who could marry, but they weren't able to be married for 9 months because a loved one died shortly after marriage equality became available. So you're absolutely right that whether you were able to be married for a single day or not, couples in our community can still show that they were committed to one another. And that's basically how they can access these benefits. If they can show that they would have married if they could have and satisfied the requirements, then they're eligible for these monthly benefits, which can have tremendous impacts on people's lives, and to the tune of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime.
I mean, that is why this title of this broadcast is literally Money, 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 because there is an opportunity here that is really unprecedented, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I just want to put this in perspective that this is money that our community was robbed of for so long. I mean, the way Social Security works is that every single paycheck that you get, that I get, that anyone gets, a fixed percentage goes to the government for Social Security. The government basically says, let me hang on to that money for you, and then I'll return it to you in your retirement years, or once you die, I'll pay your eligible family members. But because of marriage discrimination, so many people in our community were locked out of their own money. And so these victories have now finally created a pathway where people can get what they put into the system. And so absolutely, it can have a huge, huge financial difference in people's lives. Just to give you one example, one of our class members recovered $80,000 in past due benefits. And on top of that, gets an extra $1,000 every single month for the rest of their life. So this is something that people need to take advantage of. It can make the difference between whether or not you have financial security in older age. If you're in the margins of financial security, it can make the difference between whether you have a roof over your head. You know, other people in the class have experienced homelessness because they weren't able to access these benefits. And again, this is a source of security that our community paid for and that they deserve. And we're finally now able to access them as a result of the lawsuits that we brought and the Biden administration choosing to dismiss the government's appeals, which means the victories are now final and secure for everybody.
Yes, and you put it so well. And I got to put this up here. One of our friends tuning in, true, so true. Millions of dollars have been stolen from us. And it's long overdue. And I mean, we know so many, I personally know so many of our LGBTQ seniors, and we call them trailblazers here in Chicago, who were together for decades upon decades, right? Before marriage equality was a thing. And I'm thinking about them in this moment because we know that so much of what our LGBTQ seniors have to go through mirrors that of what LGBTQ youth have to deal with, right? And what queer youth have to deal with. So access, loneliness, financial stability. Oftentimes, our LGBTQ seniors have to go back in the closet if they feel like they're unsafe in a assisted living facility. All types of things happen for our seniors, and we don't often take care of them the way that we should. And so, this is an opportunity, to your point, for people to go from maybe having a $600 check to potentially a $1,600 check, right? I read that like the average right now is like a $1,400 check that people can get every month.
That's right. And it could be much bigger than that if you're accessing survivor's benefits. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of the impact this has on our seniors. You know, one of the things that's so striking to me is that the average American, a non-LGBT person, there's 1 out of 3 that age alone. But for people in our community, LGBT seniors, it's more like 75% of us age alone. And the reason for that is a combination of reasons, including estrangement, oftentimes from our families of origin. Also, oftentimes we have fewer kids. And so all of that leads to a situation where when you're older, you have to rely more on yourself to make ends meet, and or you have to pay for caregiving. And so that's why survivors benefits are particularly important for people in our community. And I think you're right, you know, for seniors who've encountered a lifetime of discrimination already, this was something that cast a long shadow into the future because it's a monthly benefit that you get or not for the rest of your life potentially. And so this was such an important thing that marriage equality didn't automatically fix and that we needed to go in and, you know, clean up. It was a piece of unfinished business, but thankfully now the pathway is open. The challenge is just getting people to understand that it's open. Even if you were never able to be married for a single day, you can access this benefit of marriage. So thankfully, you're helping to amplify that message. And anything that anyone can do to amplify the message, we would welcome, because there are thousands of people out there. And, you know, understandably, they just don't know that the world has changed, that the rules have changed. There's been a game-changing development, and they need to take advantage of this.
Absolutely. We've got another comment here from the stream. I appreciate y'all tuning in this afternoon. Queer wealth has been taken out of the community. Black queers have been doubly hit with the theft of generational wealth. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, Peter, if I'm sitting here and I'm like, this could be me. You could be talking to me. Maybe I should have applied. I didn't think I could. Is it too late? So is it too late for people? And if not, how do they get started?
It is not too late. It is never too late. The first thing I want to say is that everything I'm about to say is on our website. We have a lovely frequently asked questions document that will help people navigate this process. It's at lambdalegal.org. It's right there on our homepage. It says Navigating Social Security Survivors Benefits. And the process involves making an appointment with SSA. Depending on when you're watching this, maybe it'll be in person, maybe it'll be telephonic if we're still dealing with a pandemic. But this isn't something you fill out online. This is something you have to do with a representative live. And then you need to make sure that they understand that you are potentially a class member. Our FAQ goes into how you can flag that for them. And then ultimately, the question that will be posed to you is, how can you show that you would have qualified for these benefits if we didn't have marriage discrimination? And as we talked about, there's lots of ways people can show that, because commitment leaves behind evidence. You can talk about any discussions you had of wanting to marry one another, any rings you may have exchanged, any commitment ceremony you might have had. You lived together, you were on the lease together, you were on bank accounts together, you had joint credit cards. Anything and everything is fair game. Photographs are also okay to show people. I mean, a photograph is worth 1,000 words. Obituaries, wills, all of these things are sort of relevant bits and pieces of information. There is no sort of litmus test. You don't have to, check 6 boxes out of 10 or something like that. It's really a holistic, open-ended inquiry, very common sense, really, at the end of the day, to show that you were a loving, committed couple. And of course, you would have married if you had the chance. And once you clear that hurdle, then the survivor's benefits are yours. And they allow you to, if you were the lower wage earner, collect on the higher wage earner's work history, or even if you were the higher wage earner, basically you can delay collecting your own Social Security. So you'll get more money at the end of the day once you switch to your own record. Again, all this stuff is on our FAQ. I know I went through that very quickly, but please don't be discouraged. Anyone, if you think that you might be a class member, apply. If you loved somebody and you weren't able to be married, or your marriage was delayed because of discriminatory marriage laws, please apply. You might very well be sitting on tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of benefits, and it's worth your time to do this.
It is incredible to me, because even as you say this, I have read the articles myself. Okay. It is still unbelievable to me, because the requirements are so broad. And I think these are probably the broadest requirements for anything having to deal with the government that has probably ever been. In that, when you talk about relationships have documentation and history, I mean, I felt that, and it comes through in pictures. It can come through in a will, and all these different ways in which we document our lives with each other. And I think about all the people who have lost loved ones, and how they could be reaping these benefits. Y'all, if you ain't sharing this information already, I don't know what you're doing. You need to share this broadcast with someone that you love, with a friend. Peter has said it before. If we could shout it from the rooftops, we would. And so we have the ability to do that with the share button. And I want y'all to get into that. I've got the ticker going, right? Visit lambdalegal.com for more information. You can find more information there. And I told y'all, I teased a little bit that we had a special guest. And we do. So John O'Malley, he's joining us. And John is actually someone who Peter worked with and who was able to reap some benefits, but it wasn't very easy. John, welcome. Welcome to the broadcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Anna.
I'm glad you could join us. And you were in this situation. You went to apply and you got denied prior to the Biden administration opened this all up. Please tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, actually, I had never applied.
Okay.
I lost my partner about 15 years ago, and I had never applied because it wasn't, it wasn't available to me as far as I knew. It wasn't until somebody sent me a link in November to an article that was published about the new law, and in there was I found the fact sheet that Peter's talking about, and I read it, and I seemed to meet all the criteria. So I went and I applied for Social Security at our Santa Rosa office here in California. And I had a phone interview, and they went through the process, and they denied it. And they denied it because they never asked for any of the things that were on the fact sheet from Lambda. So they just denied it because they said we were never married. And I came back and said, well, that was the whole point of the law. And so they didn't, they said your only option is to appeal it. And so at that point, I contacted Lambda and I talked to somebody down there, and she was very helpful, and she gave me a lot of, suggestions as to what I should do next. And one was to reapply, to call the Santa Rosa office again and give them a EM number that was an emergency message number that was on the very beginning of this Lambda fact sheet, but for some reason I overlooked it when I communicated the first time. And so then I was sure the second time around that with that number, that's pretty much spelled out what the new law was about. But again, it was denied. So, I was at this point, I have done a lot of over the years. I grew up in San Francisco, and way before I came out, I was fighting for what was right for as far as all kinds of issues. But as a gay man, I fought for gay rights, and I fought for AIDS rights, and I fought for marriage rights. So I was an older man now. It was time to fight for our rights. And my partner, who had paid into Social Security all those years as he lived. And so I called Lambda again, and this time it was just all done by it was just all communicated by email. And they sent me a name of a couple lawyers in Tucson, Arizona, who had worked on the case, and I contacted them, and I was ready to hire them if necessary, because I was fighting for what was right. Well, somehow my communication with the woman at Lambda came across Peter's desk, and he called me. And he asked, and this was in between all these things of hiring a private lawyer and stuff. And he wanted to reach out to the Department of Justice to see if they would look at the case again, which he did and which they did. And I got a call from sometime later. This was over like a 4 or 5 month period. I got a call from Social Security with an apology for the way I was treated, and that it would never happen again to anybody else that came into the office. So this for me was a huge victory. It had more to do with it had a lot more to do. It had more, that was my victory. And I had said that to a lot of my friends that I had talked to this about. It's not about the money here. It's about what's right.
It's absolutely about what's right. And I'm so grateful for your persistence, right? Like there's a moment where you do have to be persistent, and you have to say, am I going to keep fighting, or I'm just going to say, forget it. And denied once is one thing, denied twice is another thing, and then for Peter to be there, right, and say, wait 1 second. Because I also read that people are supposed to be trained to be able to answer these calls, right, and to answer these inquiries. And so, Peter, have you found that it has improved since John went through the process?
I think it has improved. It's not perfect, of course. And so we do need people still to be a little bit tenacious and to fight for themselves. But really, the system is designed so that you're not supposed to need a lawyer, right? The people who were involved in the class action had lawyers. We won that fight. And so now it's supposed to just come down to people making the appointments and applying. And so I hope that people understand that, look, situations like John's may come up again, and we will be there. People can reach out to our help desk. But I really hope for the vast majority of people, it'll be much smoother, much more seamless. Really, it's, maybe a phone call to make the appointment itself, and then you get the benefits. That's really how this is supposed to work. But I think what's so striking about your story, John, is that, you live here in California, where I am as well. Oftentimes we think of the West Coast as being like the place where everything is fixed and solved. And here you were still not getting equality, this many years into marriage equality. And I'm so glad that you kept fighting, because there are so many people like you, people whose loved ones died before marriage equality, where they lived, whatever year that was. And they stand to receive so much money and dignity, as you just pointed out, right? It's half of it's about the money, half of it's about the government not treating you as if you were legal strangers. You weren't just roommates, this was somebody who meant everything to you. And the government is now finally respecting that. And that is a benefit that I think a lot of people have really taken to heart when they've gone through this process. And I hope that will also incentivize other people to go out and do this.
Yeah, I mean, when I read it, that it had been approved, I knew my relationship with my partner was valid, but to have it validated by the government really, it brought a tear to my eye. It really was.
Absolutely. I've spoken with so many class members who have cared for their loved ones until their final breath. And, how dare anyone accuse us of not having legitimate, real, valid relationships? These are the people that we cared for all throughout our lives. And it is so significant that the government is going back now and recognizing that relationship, even though, you never got to be legally married when both of you were still around. This is a piece of justice that's been long overdue and that's now being served up. And so, that's why I want everyone to know about this. Go tell a friend. And I think, as you said on your last broadcast, tell 2 friends, and then have them tell other people, because the folks who are affected by this, 60s, 70s, 80s, right, 90s, like, how do we reach them? We've got to do this as a community.
Absolutely. And John, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, because I think it echoes the stories of so many folks in our community. And to your point, there is the money and what you said about dignity and being seen, right? It's so incredibly important to feel seen, especially when you earned it, you paid into it. It is rightfully yours. And so, John, thank you so much for being our special guest today.
I just want to say we really need to thank Miss Thornton as well, because I believe in one of the articles, there was an article in the New York Times that I read, quotes from her, and she said pretty much the same thing about should she fight it. She was in a long-term relationship with her partner over 25 years, and her partner died, I think, 6 months before marriage equality, and she questioned, does she have the fight? I questioned did I have the fight, but I do, and I'm going to continue fighting for the rest of us.
That's right. That's right. And I love it. Thank you so much, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're spreading the word.
Doing my part. And to John's point, Peter, there have been a lot of people who have reaped the benefits so far. This isn't a one-off case. This isn't just an anomaly. There are people who are reaping not only the monthly benefits, but that back pay. Some folks have gotten like $80,000, $70,000 from years or even a decade of time of not reaping SSA benefits, survivor benefits.
That's right. At the very least, people should be able to get benefits going back to when they applied or tried to apply. And so that's why it's important for everyone to act early. As soon as you're eligible and you want these benefits to start, go ahead and apply. If you're not disabled, you can apply as early as age 60. If you are disabled, you can apply as early as age 50. So it really behooves people to get in there as early as they can and to get as many benefits as they're entitled to.
Absolutely. And we're at that time of the broadcast where we're ready to take your questions. Okay. So I am not the one, but if Peter can answer your questions, he's told me that he will try and that he will do his best. So I am looking at the chat. If you've got questions, feel free to send them in. This is the time. Happy to take them. And in the meantime, while we wait on folks to submit questions, I'm just thinking, Peter, how do we continue to get the word out? What else is Lambda Legal doing to sort of shout it from the rooftops?
Well, things like this, I will say tomorrow, I also have a presentation with the LA LGBT Community Center. And so we are kind of doing this to as many audiences as we possibly can. We've done similar trainings with service providers to get out the word. But really, there is no silver bullet. I wish there was. But it's kind of the hard work of getting as many people to hear this as will listen. And this is going to be a longer term project. It's not a one and done thing. SSA, for its part, is also committed to doing outreach. They have a program where you can even request a speaker. So if people want SSA to speak to a group, that's an option that is available as well. It's so lovely when you're no longer sort of adversarial to the government, and the government is now, sort of on board with the program. And so we're very, very happy about that. And as I mentioned, I hope that John's experience is increasingly rare, that people will have a much more seamless experience. But, it's kind of like calling up customer service when you have an issue, frankly. And so sometimes you do need to be prepared and have your points and be able to communicate that you're in the special situation. They need to look up a special sort of rules for you, but really none of that should deter people from applying. And again, spreading the word of mouth, that's a really critical way in which we can make this victory broader, right? I mean, that's the cool thing about this in some respects. It's a victory, and the more people that know about it, the bigger it gets. And that's a pretty amazing thing, I think.
It is. And there are millions and multi-millions of dollars in this pot, family. So I don't want y'all to miss out on this opportunity for your family, friends, and loved ones. All right. Now let me go check and see if we got any questions that have come in here for Peter. All right. Yeah, we've got one here. So what is the very first step in applying for benefits? Where do we go?
Great question. There is a 1-800 number that you call, and that is the call that you make to have an appointment where you will apply for survivor's benefits. So if you go to our website, lambdalegal.org, we've got that document that we mentioned. It has the number that you call in there. That's the first step. And then the second step is you actually have the appointment, whether, if it's post-pandemic and the field offices are open, you'll go in person. But if not, it'll just be over the telephone. And then you apply. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, step one is contact SSA. They will get you in touch with someone in the field office, and you'll make an appointment through that.
And family, I'm going to get us this PDF document with all this information in it, so that you can access this really easily. We're going to put it in the show notes. Carter, the producer, is going to make sure we get this all done so that you can definitely make that call and get started on the process. All right. Let's see here. Got a question here. Do people have to be single to qualify?
Also a very good question. So recall there are two different class actions, right? So one is the one for people who were never able to be married at all. That's people like John O'Malley. And so you're legally single in that sense, right? But of course, now you have this pathway to get a benefit of marriage because you were deprived of the ability to be married. Then there's the class action for people who were married, but they weren't able to be married for a full 9 months. The other part of this question, the question that may be being alluded to is, do you have to not be married right now to qualify for survivor's benefits? That may have actually been the purpose. So let me clarify that. If you remarried after age 60, you are still eligible for survivor's benefits. So just because you found love again doesn't mean that you're necessarily foreclosed from getting survivor's benefits. If you remarried before age 60, then that does affect your eligibility. Again, all this is stuff in the FAQ. You don't have to remember it, but that is a really good question as well. So don't think that just because you're with someone else in your life now, that you are not eligible. That is not true. You still can be eligible for this, because that's how it's always worked for straight couples who are married. They became widowed, and then they found love again later in life. If you remarried after 60, you're still eligible for survivor's benefits.
Absolutely. I love that question. That didn't even pop into my head. But lots of folks find love. Okay, I hope so. All right, we got another question here. Who can I talk to about estate planning? Well, I don't think Peter's the person, but one of our good partners, right? The Care Plan with Jacqueline Boyd is a wonderful place to start. THE-CARE-plan.com, the Care Plan. She does all types of care planning for LGBTQ folks and seniors, and actually she just cares for everybody. Okay, so Jackie is the one. So I would say go visit thecareplan.com as your first stop for wonderful care and just holistic care and estate planning as well. All right. Peter, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
It has been a total pleasure. Thank you, Anna, for continuing to spread the good word.
Yes, and I'm going to keep doing this. So, y'all, this is the deal. This is like our call to action moment, okay? If you enjoyed this broadcast, if you learned something, if you got something out of it, if you know somebody who this might apply to, I want you to share this out, all right? I want you to share this all over the place. Send some people some text messages, okay? Even if people, and I really want to emphasize this, even if people don't think it applies to them, it might just apply to them. Do you see what I'm saying? So give it some. Definitely share this out. We'll be reposting it as well. I'm going to do some more TikToking. I'm going to make this our podcast for today to help spread the word, because the more people that know, the more people that may actually reap the benefits. And that's the whole point of this thing. And oftentimes, I know a lot of folks, we complain about government and all this good stuff. All right, but we didn't pay into this, and the government has opened up the floodgates. All right. So in this moment, let us reap the benefits. Okay. Thanks again, Peter, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And family, here's the deal, right? You already know Anna Deshawn here, founder of E3 Radio, co-founder of The Cube. We have a lot of other wonderful things coming down. And I want to leave y'all with this commercial about The Cube. If you don't know what The Cube is, it is coming soon, and it will be the one and only destination of music and podcasts by BIPOC and QT-POC creatives. All right. So if you aren't signed up for our newsletter, go ahead and do that, so you're one of the first people to know when the app drops. And you can visit us at thecube.app. That's THEQUBE.app, and check our commercial. And I hope that you share this out. All right. Peace.
Meeting up with the homies was a little different this year, but we still found a way to make it work.
Y'all heard, y'all hoes, you could talk. You talking all this shit, but let me see if you could walk.
There's so much media being made by our community that it can be a little overwhelming to find something new to get into. But what if there was a place where you can find curated podcasts, music, and other media by BIPOC and QT-POC creators? The Cube is an all-in-one platform where you can find the best media by BIPOC and QT-POC creators right at your fingertips. It's loaded with features for artists and audiences, like being able to tip your favorite creators or being able to participate in revenue share when you publish on the platform. We've come a long way in developing this app, and we need your help to get us past the finish line. If you want quality, curated content in a community just for us, support The Cube.